introduction. So he's prepared for that. Just a couple of items for all of you at the top. 3 new reports over the last 24 hours underscore the critical importance of passing the American Jobs Plan, the jobs it will create, the type of workers who will benefit from it, and why we can pay for it by asking big corporations to pay their fair share. First are the jobs. A report from Moody's Analytics that came out yesterday afternoon projects that the economy will create 19 million jobs over the next decade if Congress passes the American Jobs Plan. Moody's also projects that the plan will help reduce the unemployment rate and drive up labor force participation on a sustained basis over the decade. A lot of the benefits will continue once the American Rescue Plan is played through. Second are the blue-collar workers who are going to benefit from this plan. According to another report from Georgetown University's Center on Education and the Workforce, an investment like the jobs plan would, quote, reverse a long-term decline in jobs and earnings for those with high school diplomas or less, which Secretary Walsh already touched on, creating 8 million jobs for this population. Create jobs at every education level, but the majority of infrastructure jobs will be for people with no more than a high school diploma. Finally, is why we can pay for this once-in-a-century investment in jobs and growth by asking corporations to pay their fair share. Another new report, people were busy reporting yesterday, by the Institution on Taxation and Economic Policy revealed that 55 big corporations paid $0 in federal taxes on 2020 profits. In fact, these companies actually received billions of dollars in tax refunds. So we believe they can pay more of their fair share so that we can help fund this, this once-in-a-generation investment. A couple of other scheduling announcements. President Biden looks forward to welcoming Prime Minister Suga to the White House on the Japanese Prime Minister, in case you all were not following, to the White House on Friday, April 16th. This will be our first in-person visit from a foreign leader in the Biden-Harris administration, reflecting the importance we place on our bilateral relationship with Japan and our friendship and partnership with the Japanese people. We look forward to sharing more details, of course, in the days to come. Finally, on a week ahead, on Monday, the president, well, there will be no Easter egg roll next year. We'll do a big one, but he will deliver remarks on the tradition of Easter at the White House. On Tuesday, he will participate in an event on the state of vaccinations. And on Wednesday, he will participate, the president will participate in an event on the historic investment in the American Jobs Plan. With that, Darlene.
Thank you, Jen. I wanted to ask you, I have a COVID question.
Sure.
And just a little while ago, we heard the president appeal again to people to take the coronavirus seriously, saying that too many people are acting as if this fight is over, and it's not. So I'm wondering, why does the president think, or you or the White House or the COVID team, why do you think this message isn't breaking through for some people? Why does he have to keep saying it again and again and again?
Well, we have always anticipated that there would be ups and downs, and that's why the president, the vice president, and all of us have continued to reiterate that we are at war with the virus, that we need to be vigilant, and that's a message you've heard from him and members of our health team throughout the past several months, even when people were feeling more and more confident out in the American public. We don't view the observation of public health guidelines as a political step. We view it as a step that helps save lives. Some people view it otherwise, but what our focus is on ensuring that we are expediting getting vaccinations out to pharmacies, doubling the number of pharmacies that have them, more than doubling, expediting, increasing the amount of vaccines that are going out to states, which we saw a dramatic increase in that. And we're also working with local mayors, business owners, and at the individual level to continue to reiterate what has long been our consistent message.
Is that message that it's too early to celebrate? I mean, how often or how much of that is part of the public education messaging? There are some PSAs that the administration is doing. How much of that message is part of that campaign?
The big focus of the public campaign is we can do this, and that it's important to take the vaccine. And obviously partnering that public messaging with our efforts to expedite in getting more vaccines out, increasing the number of vaccination sites, the number of vaccinators, we're doing those in partnership, and also working and investing, I should say, a significant amount of our public education efforts in local partners, which we've seen to be the most effective effort. So that's one of the reasons why that is where the majority of our funding for that public campaign is going.
And one other quick question regarding the call the president had today with the president of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Are you able to say if Donald Trump and the investigation that he sought into the Bidens from the Ukrainian government, did that come up at all during the conversation?
I know we've put out a readout of the call. I'm not aware of that coming up on the call.
Yeah, that was not in the readout. Okay, thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
So just to back up on Ukraine, are you concerned about Russian disinformation about the activities at the border? This has been a continuing theme, and then I have another one after that.
You're absolutely, you are absolutely right, Andrea. It has been a continuing theme. We've seen this movie before, the disinformation campaign that Russia has implemented in the past as it relates to their aggressions at the border of Ukraine. So that is certainly something we are watching. We are concerned about, and we will continue to communicate from here, but also with our partners in Europe about.
Okay, and then just on the sort of jobs and infrastructure package. Reuters polls sort of show wide support for the infrastructure package and even for corporate tax increases. But when Reuters asks Republicans, the support is very partisan. So and there's a sense that Republicans will not support anything that has basically a Democratic president's name on it. How do you change that dynamic? The president talked about it just before, and said he thinks that Republican voters will speak, but our polling shows that they're going to follow the leader.
Well, I haven't looked at your particular polling, but consistently in polling, we've seen about 80% of the public believes we need to invest in our infrastructure across the country, and that is long outdated. And the president doesn't believe that's a political issue, whether it's roads, railways, bridges, access to broadband. Access to broadband is an issue that is certainly the case, a challenge, I should say, in inner cities and lower income communities, but is also an issue across rural America, many parts of the country that are redder in the political sense and have more predominantly Republican populations. I think what our focus is going to be on is continuing to communicate the different components of this package and how it's going to specifically help the American people. We don't see it as a politically charged package or as a partisan package. And most polls you look at, when you look at the components of it, as you alluded to, agree, are consistent with that. So that's what our focus will be on. We just announced it 2 days ago, so.
Just real quick on another foreign policy one. So in Geneva, in Vienna now, there's this discussion about having U.S. and Iranian negotiators are to be in Vienna at the same time, but not meeting directly.
Right.
Can you say a word about what you expect to come out of that shuttle diplomacy and how soon you think you could actually sit down at the table together with the Iranians?
Sure. Well, for people who haven't been following it as closely as you, let me catch you up. We've agreed to participate in talks with our European, Russian, and Chinese partners to identify the issues involved in a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA with Iran. This is a welcome and potentially constructive early step, even if the diplomatic road ahead may be long, as it was during the first negotiations around the JCPOA. We are very clear-eyed about the hurdles that remain. These talks will be structured around working groups that the EU is going to form with the remaining partners in the JCPOA, including Iran. And the primary issues that will be discussed are the nuclear steps that Iran would need to take in order to return to compliance with the JCPOA, and the sanctions relief steps the United States would need to take in order to return to compliance as well. We don't anticipate presently that there will be direct talks between the United States and Iran through the process, though we certainly remain open to them. Go ahead, Kelly.
On the southern border of the United States, Customs and Border Protection has some new preliminary numbers about unaccompanied minors crossing in March, and they are way, way up. 18,500, again, preliminary number, but a big jump, suggesting it's more than seasonal, suggesting it's more than just the conditions on the ground. Is there a sense now that the administration needs to do something different in terms of the message of this is not the time to come, but children who are unaccompanied will be protected and cared for and be able to stay. Is there any movement on that as the message?
That continues to be our message, and we continue to look for ways to project it more broadly and more effectively in the region. But that is a sliver of what our efforts are, and we don't feel that simply telling people with more PSAs not to come, that is going to be the only way to reduce the number of people who are taking the journey. So in addition to that, we of course have these conversations that started last week that will be ongoing and will continue with our envoy and our officials who will be working with governments and officials in the Northern Triangle to talk about addressing conditions and talk about reducing the temptation to travel. Some of that will of course be aid and assistance and a discussion of that. The president's proposed $4 billion in his own plan, but some of it will be, of course, continuing to communicate directly with the region. And we also will continue to reiterate that our policy remains in place in terms of implementing Title 42 authority, and that the vast majority of adults are turned away. These numbers are certainly, we are not naive about the challenge, but what our focus is on is solutions and actions to help address the unaccompanied minors who are coming across the border and making it less of an incentive to come, including also continuing to implement the Central American Minors Program so kids can apply and people under 18 can apply from in-country.
Does the president see the vice president's role in stewardship of this issue, dealing with